In this lecture, we're going to talk about channels, and we're going to talk about it in terms of verticals and sales channels. So let's begin by looking at the difference between different types of verticals where we can introduce our product or service. So we typically have virtual channels. Since the advent of the internet, we've got virtual channels, and then we also have more traditional physical channels, which play a huge role in our consumerism. And then we also have virtual products, and we have physical products. And so I want to talk a little bit about some of the circumstances of selling different types of products into different types of marketplaces. So first of all, let's focus on a physical product going into a physical vertical. So this is something like any product that's pre-internet, food, auto, homes, electronics. This is about selling into an existing market or maybe even a new market, but most of these are existing markets, and it's about selling physical product. So this would be at a car dealership. This would be at a physical location. This is where we walk into a store, we make a purchase. Now let's talk about virtual products being sold into physical. So back in the day, you used to walk into like a Staples or an Office Max or some type of office store, and you could buy software in a box. And really it was a nicely done cardboard box, maybe a little bit of paper information, warranty, booklet, something like that. But the real thing that you were purchasing was a CD or a DVD, some type of a CD-ROM that had your software, because before the internet, everything had to be put as a disk into your computer and downloaded onto the computer. That was an example of selling a virtual product into a physical location. Stocks and bonds, different financial products are virtual products. There's no tangible piece, and they're being sold in physical markets. Or insurance is another option that I'd skipped over there. So insurance is the same thing. There's no tangible product, but it's being sold through physical means. Then we talk about selling a physical product through virtual channels. So a virtual channel would be something like online retail. And so large companies like Zappos and Amazon, they have done very well at figuring out how to sell our physical goods over virtual channels. Now, if you were focused on the selling process during this last 20 and 30 years, from the beginning of the internet until just recently, each year it's become more and more easy and common and natural to purchase things online. Ordering food online was one of the very first novelties that came out. But a lot of times we were scared about trusting whether or not the product we were ordering was actually going to show up. And so now that people have had so many experiences where the shipping company delivered it well, we have proof of delivery, problems are resolved well. I mean, all these doubts that we've had about the process have been resolved. And most people, not all, but most people at this point are very, very comfortable with ordering even a large ticket item over the internet if the retailer has reputable qualities. And so moving a physical product into a virtual market is really about having all of these circumstances present to provide a comfort level to that customer and allow them to feel confident in making that purchase. And then the last category would be a virtual product being sold through virtual means. And so these are things like Facebook and Google and Twitter and Netflix. I mean, these are things where there is no tangible product, nothing ever gets shipped to our house, and we really only access them through the internet. And so it's important to understand this quadrant, this grid, because we market our product differently as we know, what's available and how it's going to be received by the customer. But also, many products can be marketed in several of these areas. If I'm a shoe manufacturer, I can sell through Amazon, I can sell on my own website, and I can also sell through a physical store. And all three of those can be approached very differently. And so it's important to have a strategy and understand that those are different operations. So how about your product? Is your product virtual? Is it physical? This is an obvious choice. You can look at the product and realize if you're selling a virtual product or a physical product. But what channel do we sell that through? So a direct channel or an indirect channel is another distinction between the different types of channels. A direct channel is direct to consumer, where we would just sell directly to that consumer. So the shoe manufacturer selling on their own website to the consumer or in their own physical store to a consumer, as opposed to a shoe manufacturer selling to a shoe store that sells to you, or through Zappos or an Amazon marketplace that sells to the consumer. And so that's also important because it helps you understand your cost and how you scale. Sometimes the indirect sellers, sometimes we call it two-stepping, distribution. There's a lot of terms for it that are synonymous, but sometimes they provide a certain level of scale. And then while you're scaling, you're working on a lower margin, but you can scale a lot faster. And so that's a big conversation that you have to have, is the difference between margin and scale. And we'll talk more about that in the future. So let's talk a little bit about virtual channels. So there's a lot of different types of virtual channels. I've hinted to a couple of them. But one channel is a dedicated e-commerce store where you sell direct to a user. Another one is to do a two-step methodology like an Amazon, an eBay, a Jet, a Walmart.com. I find that when I work with newer founders and business owners, they don't realize that there are many more marketplaces besides just an Amazon or a Walmart, or an eBay. A lot of people don't realize that Walmart is actually a marketplace. They do something that they call endless aisle. Endless aisle means when you get to the end of Walmart's offering and you're still looking, then they start to backfill with third-party sellers. And there's a lot of companies that sell endless aisle on their apps and on their mobile websites and their desktop sites. And so looking at all the different marketplaces available to you, if that's the route you're going to go, is important, because you will find that your product is better received on one marketplace versus another. So for example, there are some sentiments that are embedded in with shopping on eBay. eBay was around the very first. They've been around for a very long time, but we feel differently about shopping on eBay than we do on Amazon. There's a level of quality control, a speed of shipping, a level of what we perceive as customer service. And they're very different. And there are times where you go to eBay for those reasons, and there's times that you go to Amazon for those reasons. And so you have to really understand how the customer is going to perceive the marketplace. And then there's also specialty marketplaces that have a little different style to them. One example would be like Etsy. Etsy is a marketplace that is more craft and consumer goods that are homemade. Etsy has some regulations about how many employees you can have in your business, and it's really trying to be the small business marketplace. Now, that might be more appealing to your clientele. It's just important that you research it out and you make those decisions. There's also virtual channels called aggregators. Aggregators are people that take more of a vertical market approach, where they take many people and they create sometimes almost a reverse marketplace. And so LendingTree is one example, where you go in, you fill out one credit application, and then they shop it around to a lot of different people to figure out which one will be the best offer for you. Aggregators typically are people that have many options and will take your information and figure out what is the right thing for you, and either give you those options or make a recommendation and guide you toward the right answer. Social commerce is another newer virtual channel where through gaming and through social, you're able to buy things. And so this has existed in many formats on Facebook, on Twitter. Zynga is another example of a gaming platform that works on social media and has a lot of different add-on purchases. So when you're playing a video game, whether it's on a console or on a phone, there's now a lot of options for upgrades, additional points and coins and levels, things that you can buy through this new social commerce kind of gaming platform. And so this is something that's become very valuable and very popular, and is the reason why a lot of the apps that you download are free when you first download them, because they know that once they get you hooked, you're going to spend a lot more money than you would have ever spent on the initial purchase of the game. There's also kind of deal a day and flash deal type websites, things like Groupon, KSL Deals, Living Social. We worked on one years ago at my agency called Camo Fire, which is a hunting website, and it just has deals for hunters every single day. And so there's lots of different formats like this where there's flash sales, and they create an urgency for the customer. Now, as a founder and a business owner, sometimes this is a great way to move inventory that doesn't work out. Maybe you are a shoe manufacturer and you create a shoe that doesn't end up selling as fast as you thought it was going to sell. And you don't want to sit on the inventory. Maybe it's a summer item and you don't want to sit on the inventory during the winter. So maybe mid to late fall, you go in and you put it on a flash sale site and clear it out at, just a small margin above cost. And so this serves a very good purpose. It's a way to move a lot of discounted and overstocked goods. Most successful startups are going to pick one of these areas to focus on, and then they're going to expand from there. The hardest thing about being a founder and being excited about your idea is sometimes you're so excited, you look at the list and say, well, I could do this and this and this, but it really comes down to time and resources. Do you have the money? Do you have enough time to do a good job in all of these verticals? And if you don't, you need to pick one. Start there, make it successful, go to the next one. Be methodical about how you approach it. So let's talk a little bit about physical channels. So physical sales channels are going to include OEM, which is original equipment manufacturing. So this is where you supply something that is part of somebody's product. So maybe you're a wheel manufacturer that you sell wheels to automobile makers, and they put your wheels on their automotives. You are a part of the manufacturing process. And this is very nice because once you get picked up into an OEM relationship, you're pretty hard to get rid of because you're the person that they go to get that part. They depend on you. You might think about being a system integrator where you actually use your components to create a brand. So maybe you source from other OEM manufacturers and you integrate systems and create your branded product. And so it becomes your product because you put these particular pieces together. And so system integrators is another really good option. Maybe you're a value added reseller. Maybe you're somebody that takes a system that's already put together, and then you add an additional warranty or an additional feature or support. So there's a lot of, I put PC laptops as an example. That is a laptop reseller that doesn't really create anything. What they do is they offer really great customer service and really great warranties on products that already exist. And people buy from them for peace of mind, but they move a lot of product because they're value added. There's also the option to have a direct sales force. Sometimes this can be as base and rudimentary as knocking doors and making cold calls. Sometimes it can be activations and demand generation at events. And there's lots of different ways that you can generate direct selling. Now, it's hard because when you do direct sales channels, there aren't very many people that respond to it these days. And so typically when you do get somebody, you have to charge a much higher price. Now, usually these are not shoppers that are comparing, and so you can get away with a higher price, but you have to decide that that's the way you want to run your business. Having an OEM type pricing model where you're pricing at a minimal margin and then trying to do direct sales force is not going to work out because you're not going to have enough margin to sustain a really good sales force. We'll talk a little bit more about that in future lectures. And then another idea is distribution. Distribution is great because a lot of times they hold a relationship with a series of retailers, and if you can get them to pick up your product, you'll have instantaneous built-in sales. The trade-off is really about margin. Sometimes distribution has different product dealers already built in. If they pick up your product, they'll start working their dealer base, and so they know who they're going to sell to. They might also work with retailers and mass merchants like the big box stores. And so there's a lot of different options of how we can start, either virtual or physical. And so think about these channels, think about your product, and then start to prioritize your efforts and how you're going to reach your correct customer segment and which channel would be likely to find that person. Okay, so I'll see you guys in the next lecture.